So, I got to say something. The area that you work in is very interesting to me because it was terrifying to me as a parent to look into the future and think about sexuality for our kids. And I saw a guy. I saw a guy speak named Peter Gerhardt.
Yes, he's a good friend of mine, and we present together.
And I was really a big fan of his. And I haven't seen you speak, but Navah told me all about kind of your presentation. I thought it was great. But Peter mentioned something very important, which was from the very early age we start talking about sex in codes that don't make any sense at all to people who are autistic. And that was an amazing thing. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that first and just talk about sexuality in general and how we can bring it up to our kids who are autistic.
Sure, absolutely, Matt. Well, first I'll say that if you are looking to see me present, you can look on YouTube. I did a TED Talk on the subject of autism and sexuality. So if you just type in Amy Gravino TED Talk, it'll come right up for you. And there's some other videos on YouTube as well, and on my website, amygravino.com. So as I mentioned, yes, Peter Gerhardt is a friend and colleague of mine, and he explains all of this so well. And the best way to kind of illustrate it is to say, how many words do we have for arm? An arm is an arm. We call an arm. How many words do we have for private parts, for a penis, for a vagina? There are tons of euphemisms. Yeah. There are tons of, endless. You could list so many. And that makes it difficult then to have these conversations because we use so many different euphemisms and terms for these things, and it gets very confusing. Right. And if you don't know what these euphemisms are, it can set you up and make you out to be a very vulnerable person, because people will see, oh, this person doesn't really understand this, and this is someone that can be taken advantage of. So, oftentimes parents will say to me that they don't want to talk about sex. You hear the old thing about, if I tell my child about sex, they'll want to go out and have sex, and nothing could be further from the truth. The actual truth is that if you give your child information, it will make them informed. It will empower them to make the choices that they need to make when they're out there in the world, as opposed to keeping them naive to this information, which will only leave them more vulnerable and unable to make those choices carefully and successfully. And then they'll be seeking out that information from other sources, the internet, their peers, not so reputable sources. So that's why it's so important that individuals on the spectrum have access to accurate and thorough sex education.